Hey Krafty Friends, it's Jen from Katahdin Krafts, and welcome to the ScrapbookPal channel today. In this month's project, I created a cute little birthday card using Catherine Pooler designed stamps and dies, and also some Nuvo Shimmer Powders. The first set that I'm working with today is Lovely Birdies. How cute are those? I end up stamping out 3 of the birds, but I only used 2, and I also used that branch in today's project as well. And they have some nice sentiments right in this stamp set as well, but I brought in some little leaves sentiments because I really like that a little birdie told me, and then there's all sorts of things that you can put as a sub sentiment. So you've bought a new house, you've got a new job, you're getting married, you're expecting, and it's your birthday. So these stamp sets can be used for all different occasions. Now I wanted to work with some Nuvo Shimmer Powders. I haven't worked with them in a while and I love them. I'm showing you now my swatches. I swatch all of my inks and my powders obviously, and what I've done here is I do them separate on their own, and then I also mix them with other colors that I think will work well together, so you can kind of see that mixture. I like the combination of Blue Blitz and Solar Flare. I like when they overlap the green that they make. So those are the 2 that I selected for today's project because I was thinking that I wanted a little bit of a blue sky and perhaps a little bit of grass. So the first thing I did was cover my work surface, and then you just sprinkle just a little bit of the powder onto watercolor paper. It does require a thicker paper than just my regular Copic friendly cardstock that I use. And I'm sprinkling the Blue Blitz alone on the top and then the Solar Flare on the bottom. And now I'm going to spritz that with some water from my Distress sprayer. And that alone, I always think, I have issues with this. I think that it works really well just with squirting it and not playing with it, but for some reason I can never stop myself from playing with it. So here I go and getting out a watercolor brush, and I'm just going to mix that. I wanted to make sure I got some nice green tones in there, and I don't really want the powder to be showing still on the edges. So that was another reason, but I think if I just really took the time and squirted that well, it would work on its own and kind of make its own pattern. But yeah, I always end up grabbing out a watercolor brush and and playing with it. So now with this one, I just wanted to have that blue watercolor sky. So again, I'm using watercolor paper and I'm just spritzing that blue Blitz. And again, I couldn't stop myself from playing with it, so I just wanted to get the channels of water kind of going a little bit. So I lightly touched this one with the watercolor brush, just lightly. And I was happy with that. I just wanted a nice light watercolor looking sky, and that is what the Nuvo Shimmer drops or shimmer powders do. They make a nice shimmery watercolor effect. Now when I'm setting those 2 panels aside to dry, I already had stamped out my images that I wanted to use for this card. The ink that I used was Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink, which is Copic marker friendly. And you can see that I had a little uh-oh with that Y13 marker. It left a little pool of ink, so I just had to wipe that up quickly. And what I generally do when I am coloring my images is I start with my lightest color first, which is that Y13, and then I'm going in with my medium tone, which is the Y15, and then I lay down the Y17, which is my darkest tone. So I go from light to dark, and then I go back again. And this helps the ink get saturated into those paper fibers, and so therefore you can get a really good blend. And I'm just going to touch up that little beak with YR04, and I went just a little bit out of the line, so I used a colorless marker or a colorless blender to just pick up that little bit of pigment that had come out of the edge. And now with my branches, I'm using YG03 and YG17. I'm only using 2 colors for this because it's such a small area that you don't really need the triple tone. It kind of just doesn't, you can't see the difference. So just 2 colors is fine for that. And now these are my images that I decided to use on the inside of my card today. I wanted to jazz that up a bit, so I decided to go that route. And now with this cute little tree that also is in that little leaf sentiment set, I'm using the YG03 and the YG17 again, but this time I'm also pulling in a little bit of that Y15 marker, and that just gives it a little bit of a different tone. Even though I go right over it again with the YG03, it still is a little bit of a different effect shining right through that color. And now for the bird that's in the inside, I wanted to mimic a little bit of that sky color on the outside panel, so I went with blues. I did a B02 for my light color, and then I did a B04 for my mid-tone and a B06 for the darkest. And again, I'm doing the same technique that I did with the yellow bird. I lay down that light color and then I layer over it and then I bring it all out, so I get that nice blend. I don't like any harsh colors. And then for that little belly, I wanted it to be just a lighter shade, so I did the B00. And now with the little birthday hat, I wanted, again, to mimic those colors on the front of the card panel. So I used yellows and blues, which are also complementary colors. Now I decided to use just my plain sky. I thought that showcased the branch better than the green. It kind of got lost in that. So I'm cutting down my card panel to 3 3/4 by 5. In this way I can use a mat underneath, and the mat will be 4 inches by 5 1/4, and that will give it an 1/8 inch all around. And now this will have a triple matted effect when we put the card together. So now it's time to stamp on the sentiment, and I'm not gonna lie, when I directly stamp something onto a project, it gives me anxiety. The Misty is definitely helpful with this, so I just took my time and lined it up, and you can see that I'm using my grid, and that definitely helps to make sure I'm gonna get that on there nice and straight. So I did end up doing this 3 times because of the watercolor paper. It absorbs the ink a little bit more than a regular panel of cardstock. So I made sure that I inked that up each time with my Lawn Fawn jet black ink. Then I'm going to just clean off those stamps with the chamois. And it came out really well. So a little birdie told me is what the sentiment is. Now again, because we're using a thicker cardstock or a thicker piece of paper with the watercolor paper, I'm going to be super generous with that liquid adhesive. So I'm going to put a lot of that on, and then I'm going to push that down, and you can see that it was fighting back a little bit because of the thickness. So I'm going to put a little bit of weight on that and set that aside. What I do is I use my stamping blocks, and then I also put some very heavy books on top of it as well. And now I place my whole card base into the Misty, and I scored it so I could see where the line was, and then I stamped that "It's Your Birthday" sentiment in the middle. And I did do that twice to make sure I got a nice crisp image. And now I'm going to use some precision tip glue and add the little birthday cap on to the bird that goes in the middle, and then just add some more adhesive to the bird and to the little tree. And we're going to put that into the middle of the card. So it'll be a nice little surprise when they open up that card. And now we're going to finish the front panel. I'm going to just put a little bit of that adhesive. I love this Barely Art glue. I love the tip. So it's definitely one of my go-to, my favorite glues right now. And now I'm going to put on this little yellow bird, and I wiggled this around, which is another benefit of using a liquid adhesive. So I'm wiggling it because I wanted it to be grounded looking on top of the branch. Like I wanted his little feet to be attached to it, so I just wiggled that around. And I had to be a little careful because the fibers in the watercolor paper can tear really easy, so I just had to be super careful. And again, I'm going to be generous with the adhesive just because it is a thick panel that we're adding on. And there we have our card panel attached to our card base, and I thought that little area right there needed a little bit more something in there just to balance it all out. And I had these dewdrops in my stash that were this pretty yellow color, So I thought those were perfect. So I'm just going to use that Barely Art glue because that will dry clear. And there we go. We have a cute little birthday card. A little birdie told me it's your birthday. I thought it was sweet and simplistic but elegant. So thank you so much for stopping in and visiting with me today. All of the products that I use today can be found at ScrapbookPal.com. Their online store has many different companies, so it's a one-stop shopping experience. If you haven't subscribed below, we would really appreciate if you did so. Thank you very much and happy crafting!